He told the young soldier his grip was wrong. They laughed at him, called him grandpa, told him to sit down and let the professionals handle it. What they didn't know was that the old man in faded jeans watching from the bench had once commanded 40,000 troops in the most dangerous war zone on Earth. And when they handed him a rifle and said, "Show us what you got, old-timer," the shooting range went dead silent. Because legends don't need to announce themselves, they just pull the trigger. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we dive into this story of respect, humiliation, and a single perfect moment that reminded an entire generation what real skill looks like, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from today. And if you believe experience beats arrogance every single time, hit that subscribe button. These are the stories that prove age is just a number when you've got decades of excellence behind you. The Fort Carson shooting range sat 20 miles outside Colorado Springs, nestled in high desert terrain where wind kicked up red dust and the Rocky Mountains loomed like silent witnesses. It was a Tuesday morning, 0800 hours, and the range was already alive with the crack of gunfire and the metallic snap of magazines being loaded. This wasn't a tourist attraction or a civilian gun club. This was military training ground, where soldiers sharpened skills that might one day keep them alive in places most people only saw on news broadcasts. The range master, Sergeant Kowalski, ran the facility with military precision. Sign-in required. Safety briefing mandatory. Eye and ear protection non-negotiable. The targets were standard military issue. Silhouettes at 25, 50, and 100 yards. The weapons were M4 carbines and M17 pistols, checked out from the armory with documentation that would make a librarian jealous. On this particular morning, a group of 8 young soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division had reserved lanes for qualification training. They were loud, confident, full of that particular brand of military swagger that came from being young, fit, and convinced of their own invincibility. The oldest among them was maybe 24. The youngest, fresh from basic training, couldn't legally rent a car yet. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison led the group, 26 years old, 3 combat deployments, confident to the point of arrogance. He'd qualified expert marksman on his last range day and wasn't shy about reminding everyone. His soldiers looked up to him, respected his experience, followed his lead. When Jake talked about shooting, they listened. "All right, listen up," Jake announced to his squad, voice carrying across the firing line. "Today's about consistency. I want every round center mass. No excuses. We're not here to spray and pray like amateurs. We're professionals." His soldiers nodded, loading magazines with practiced efficiency. The morning air was crisp, temperature in the low 60s. Perfect conditions for shooting. No wind yet, though that would change by afternoon. At the far end of the range, away from the active firing lanes, an old man sat alone on a wooden bench. He'd been there when they arrived, sitting quietly, watching. Nobody paid him much attention. Range regulations allowed civilians on certain days, and old veterans often showed up to watch, reliving glory days or whatever it was old people did when they had nothing better to occupy their time. The man looked to be in his late 60s, maybe early 70s. He wore faded Levi's, a plain gray t-shirt, and scuffed running shoes that had seen better days. His hair was silver gray, cut short but not military short. His face was weathered, lined from years under hostile sun. He sat with his hands folded, watching the young soldiers with quiet interest, saying nothing. Jake's squad began their qualification course. 20 rounds at 25 yards, 10 at 50, 5 at 100. Standard Army marksmanship qualification. They fired in rotation, each soldier taking their turn while others spotted or reloaded magazines. Private Marcus Chen was up, a 22-year-old from San Francisco on his first deployment rotation. Good kid, motivated, but his technique needed work. He approached the firing line, assumed his stance, and raised his M4. His grip was wrong, too tight, knuckles white from tension. His shoulder wasn't properly seated against the stock. His breathing was rapid, anxious, the old man noticed. From 30 feet away, he could see the mistakes clear as day. The kid was going to pull his shots left, maybe hit 3 out of 10 if he was lucky. Chen fired his first 5 rounds. 3 missed the target entirely. 2 hit the outer ring. Not good enough for qualification. Not close. "Relax, Chen," Jake shouted from behind. "You're choking the grip like you're strangling it. Loosen up." Chen tried again. Same result. Frustration building. The other soldiers were watching now. Some sympathetic, others hiding smirks. Nobody wanted to be the guy who couldn't qualify. The old man stood up slowly, his joints protesting after sitting too long. He walked toward the firing line, moving with the deliberate care of someone whose body had been through things bodies weren't meant to endure. He stopped a respectful distance behind Chen, waiting for the young soldier to finish his magazine. When Chen lowered his rifle, clearly frustrated, the old man spoke. His voice was gravelly but clear, carrying authority without volume. "Son, your grip's too tight. You're strangling the weapon. Let it rest in your hands. Don't fight it. And you're breathing. You're holding it. Breathe out slowly. Squeeze the trigger between heartbeats. Chen turned, surprised. Jake turned too, irritation flashing across his face. "Excuse me, sir," Jake said, the word sir carrying exactly zero respect. "But this is a closed military training session. Appreciate the input, but we got this handled." The old man nodded slightly. "Just trying to help. Kid's got potential. Just need some guidance." "Thanks, Grandpa," Jake said, smirking now, his squad picking up on his tone. "But I think we can handle teaching our own soldiers. Maybe you should head back to the bench. Watch from there. Wouldn't want you getting tired." A few soldiers chuckled. Chen looked embarrassed, caught between respecting his staff sergeant and feeling oddly defended by the stranger. The old man didn't react to the dismissal, just nodded again, turned, and walked back toward his bench. But he didn't sit. He stood there, arms crossed, still watching. Jake muttered something under his breath that made his squad laugh. "Probably hasn't held a rifle since Vietnam. Thinks he knows better than active duty soldiers. Maybe he was a cook or something," another soldier added. "Supply guy. Now he hangs around ranges living vicariously." They went back to training, but the interruption had shifted the mood. Now they were performing, showing off for the old man who dared offer unsolicited advice. Ego had entered the equation. For the next 30 minutes, they ran through drills. Jake demonstrated perfect form because he genuinely was good, and his scores reflected it. Tight grouping, consistent hits, expert marksman-level performance. He made sure to glance at the old man after each successful string, making his point. "See? We don't need your help, Grandpa." The old man just watched, expression unreadable. By 9:30, they'd finished their qualification courses. Jake gathered his squad for debrief, loud enough that the old man would hear. "That's how professionals do it. Consistent, disciplined, no wasted ammunition. Chen, you need more range time, but you'll get there. The rest of you, solid work." Private Rodriguez, always the joker, glanced at the old man and said a bit too loudly, "Hey, Sarge, think Grandpa over there could qualify? Maybe we should let him try. Show him how it's really done." The squad laughed. Jake grinned. "Why not? Old timer looks lonely. Probably hasn't had this much excitement in years." Jake walked toward the old man, his squad following, smelling entertainment. The old man straightened slightly as they approached, but his expression remained neutral, almost amused. "Hey there, sir," Jake said, laying the false respect on thick. "My boys and I were thinking. You seem pretty interested in shooting. You ever qualified on military weapons?" "Once or twice," the old man said simply. "Once or twice," Jake repeated, grinning at his squad. "Well, how about this? We've got some ammunition left. Why don't you show us what you got? Give us old-timers' perspective." The old man looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he glanced at the M4 Jake was holding. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to waste your training time." "No waste at all," Jake insisted. "Come on, one magazine. Show these young bucks how it was done in your day." His tone was pure mockery now, barely concealed. This was entertainment. This was about putting the old man in his place, showing him that modern soldiers were a different breed, that whatever he thought he knew was obsolete. The old man seemed to consider it, then nodded slowly. "All right, one magazine." Jake handed over his M4, freshly loaded with 30 rounds. "Standard qual course. Targets at 25, 50, and 100 yards. Take your time. Don't hurt yourself." The old man took the rifle, his hands moving over it with familiar efficiency. He checked the chamber, tested the weight, adjusted the sling with movements so automatic they barely registered as conscious thought. For just a second, something shifted in his posture. The casual civilian disappeared, replaced by something harder, more focused. He walked to the firing line. No hesitation. No old man shuffle. Just smooth, economical movement. Jake and his squad stood behind the safety line, watching with barely contained grins. This was going to be good. Old man probably shoots 10 rounds, hits maybe 3, makes excuses about eyesight and arthritis, slinks away, embarrassed. They'd have this story for months. The old man assumed his stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced, knees slightly bent. His grip on the rifle was firm but not tight, the weapon resting naturally in his hands. He raised the M4 to his shoulder in one smooth motion, stock seated perfectly, cheek weld solid, eye aligned with the sight. And then he went completely still. No fidgeting, no adjustments, just absolute perfect stillness. The kind of stillness that comes from muscle memory so deeply ingrained it's beyond thought. He fired. The first shot cracked across the range, sharp and clean. The 25-yard target showed a hole dead center, exactly where the heart would be. The second shot followed immediately. Same target, quarter inch from the first hole. control. Third shot, fourth, fifth, every round perfect. No deviation, no adjustment needed, just mechanical precision, each trigger pull identical to the last. Jake's grin started to fade. The old man transitioned to the 50-yard target without pause. His breathing was controlled, methodical. 3 seconds between shots. Squeeze, recover, squeeze. The sound became rhythmic, almost musical. 6 rounds, 6 perfect hits, center mass, grouping so tight you could cover it with a playing card. The soldiers weren't laughing anymore. They were watching with growing realization that something was very wrong with their assumptions. The old man shifted to the 100-yard target. This was where most soldiers started seeing spread, where wind and distance and human error created imperfection. This was where even expert marksmen had to work for it. Wind was picking up now, gusty crosswind from the west, maybe 8 miles per hour. Experienced shooters would compensate, aim slightly right, adjust for drift. The old man didn't hesitate. He read the wind instantly, made microscopic adjustments that were invisible to the watching soldiers, and fired. 12 rounds in 18 seconds. Not rushed, not slow. Perfect rhythm. Each shot a heartbeat. Each trigger pull identical to the last. The sound was hypnotic, mechanical, like a metronome keeping time with death itself. When the last shot echoed away, the range went absolutely silent except for the wind. Sergeant Kowalski, who'd been watching from the range master booth, walked out to check the targets personally. He'd seen thousands of qualification runs. He'd seen expert marksmen, scout snipers, competition shooters, but this was different. All 12 rounds had hit the 100-yard target, not just hit it, destroyed it. The grouping was so tight it looked like someone had taken a single large caliber round and punched through the center. You couldn't fit a fist through the hole. Kowalski pulled out his measuring tape. Force of habit, disbelief, demanding verification. The spread measured 1.2 inches at 100 yards with iron sights in crosswind. He walked back slowly, shaking his head. "I've been running this range for 12 years, he said to no one in particular. Never seen anything like that, not even close. The soldiers heard him. That confirmation from an authority figure, from someone who'd seen it all, made the impossible real. The old man lowered the rifle, engaged the safety, and turned around. His expression hadn't changed. No smile, no smugness, just calm, professional competence. He walked back to Jake and handed him the M4. Weapons clean, pulls slightly left at distance. Might want to have the armorer check the barrel. Jake took the rifle mechanically, his face pale. His squad stood frozen, mouths literally open. "Who?" Jake's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "Who are you?" The old man reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He flipped it open, showing a military ID card. Not current, retired, but the rank was clearly visible. Lieutenant General Marcus William Shaw, United States Army, retired. The soldiers' faces went from shock to horror to something approaching religious terror. Lieutenant General, 3 stars, a rank most soldiers never even met. A rank that commanded division, that planned wars, that sat in Pentagon briefing rooms and made decisions affecting thousands of lives, and they'd called him Grandpa. "Sir," Jake stammered, his whole body snapping to attention so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. "Sir, I apologize, sir. We had no idea." General Shaw held up a hand. "At ease, Staff Sergeant. You didn't know. That was the point." He looked at the 8 young soldiers, all of them now at rigid attention, faces burning with embarrassment and shame. "I come here sometimes," Shaw said quietly. "I like watching young soldiers train. Reminds me why I spent 40 years in uniform, but I don't announce myself because I'm not here to pull rank or relive glory days. I'm here because this," he gestured at the range, "this is where fundamentals matter. This is where you learn skills that keep you alive when everything else fails." He looked directly at Jake. "You're a good shooter, Staff Sergeant Morrison. I watched your qual run. Solid fundamentals, consistent grouping. You've got talent, and you've earned the right to be confident." Jake blinked. Surprised Shaw knew his name. Of course he knew. The sign-in sheet. Shaw had been here when they arrived. "But confidence becomes arrogance when you stop listening," Shaw continued. "Private Chen over there has potential. You saw his mistakes, but you didn't fix them. You told him what was wrong, but you didn't show him how to correct it. That's the difference between being a good shot and being a good leader." Jake's face burned hotter. "Yes, sir." "No excuse, sir." Shaw walked over to Chen, who looked like he wanted to melt into the ground. "Son, show me your stance." Chen fumbled his rifle, hands shaking, and assumed his position. Shaw made 3 small adjustments. Loosened Chen's grip, shifted his feet 2 inches, adjusted his shoulder. 30 seconds of corrections. "Now breathe. Slow. Out completely. Then squeeze between breaths. Don't think about the target. Think about the fundamentals." Chen fired 5 rounds. All 5 hit center mass. His face lit up with shock and joy. "I did it." Shaw nodded. "You did, because you've got the skill. You just needed someone to show you how to unlock it." He turned back to the group. "I qualified expert marksman at age 19. I've trained soldiers in 17 countries. I've commanded rifle companies, battalions, brigades, and divisions. I spent 40 years perfecting these skills because in war, fundamentals save lives. Not arrogance, not bravado. Fundamentals. He paused, letting that sink in. You're all good soldiers. You're motivated, disciplined, professional. But don't ever assume you know everything. Don't ever dismiss someone because they're old or different or not what you expect. The best teachers often don't look like teachers. They look like old men on benches. Complete silence. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Now, Shaw said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming almost grandfatherly. Who wants to learn how I did that? For the next hour, Lieutenant General Marcus Shaw taught those 8 soldiers more about marksmanship than they'd learned in months of formal training. He broke down every element of shooting: stance, grip, breathing, trigger control, sight picture, with the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime teaching these skills. He worked with Chen until the young private was consistently hitting center mass. He showed Rodriguez how to correct his flinch. He taught them tricks about wind reading, distance estimation, and compensating for weapon quirks that weren't in any manual. And he did it without condescension, without making them feel stupid, without leveraging his rank. He taught as a craftsman teaches, sharing knowledge because the craft itself demands excellence. Jake Morrison watched the transformation happening in real time. His soldiers weren't just learning to shoot better. They were learning humility, respect, and the difference between confidence and arrogance. Shaw was teaching them more than marksmanship. He was teaching them how to be professionals. At one point, Shaw gathered them in a semicircle. You know what separates good soldiers from great ones? He asked. It's not talent. Talent is common. It's not even courage, though that matters. It's the willingness to admit you don't know everything, to seek out teachers, to recognize that mastery is a lifelong pursuit, not a destination. He looked at each of them. Today you learned that lesson the hard way, but you learned it. That makes you better soldiers than you were this morning. By the time Sergeant Kowalski approached to say the next group needed the range, Jake Morrison's entire squad had transformed. They weren't the same cocky young soldiers who'd arrived that morning. They were humbled, educated, and grateful. As Shaw prepared to leave, Jake approached, standing at attention. Sir, I want to apologize again for the disrespect, for the assumptions, for being an arrogant ass. Shaw smiled for the first time that day. Staff Sergeant, you're 26 years old with 3 combat deployments. You've earned the right to be confident. Just remember, confidence and humility aren't opposites. The best soldiers I ever commanded had both. He clapped Jake on the shoulder. You're going to be a good leader, Morrison. Just keep learning. Keep listening, and when some old man on a bench gives you advice, maybe don't dismiss him immediately. Jake laughed, relief flooding through him. Roger that, sir. Lesson learned. As Shaw walked toward the parking lot, the entire squad snapped to attention and saluted. He returned it crisply, that old muscle memory still perfect after all these years. Private Chen called out, Sir, will you be back? Shaw turned, smiled. Every Tuesday morning, Private. Same bench. You're all welcome to join me. And then he was gone, climbing into a beat-up Ford pickup truck that had seen better days, driving away like any other retiree heading home after a morning out. The soldiers stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Rodriguez spoke. Did that really just happen? Jake shook his head in wonder. We just got schooled by a 3-star general, and I'm pretty sure it was the best training day of my career. Chen was staring at his target, at the tight grouping he'd achieved with Shaw's help. I'm coming back every Tuesday. We all are, Jake said firmly. Then he paused. After I figure out how to apologize to literally everyone I've ever mocked for being old. His squad laughed, the tension finally breaking. But it was different laughter now, not arrogance, something more humble. Word spread fast. By that afternoon, half the base had heard about the old man who destroyed targets like a machine and turned out to be a legend. By evening, Sergeant Kowalski had fielded 17 calls asking when that general would be back. The following Tuesday, when Lieutenant General Marcus Shaw arrived at the Fort Carson shooting range at 0745, he found 23 soldiers waiting at his bench. They'd brought coffee, pastries, and a portable chair they'd stolen from the rec center. Staff Sergeant Morrison stepped forward, the unofficial spokesman. Sir, we were wondering if you had time to teach us that wind reading trick you mentioned, and maybe that thing about barrel harmonics, and possibly everything else you know. Shaw looked at the crowd of young, eager faces, soldiers who'd shown up early on their day off, who'd brought him coffee, who wanted to learn from someone they'd dismissed 24 hours ago. He smiled and sat down. All right, let's talk about fundamentals. What defines mastery? Is it the ability to perform under pressure? The precision that comes from decades of practice? Or is it the humility to keep learning, keep teaching, and keep improving even when everyone assumes you're past your prime? Lieutenant General Marcus Shaw never needed to announce his rank or prove his worth. He just showed up, watched quietly, and when the moment required, demonstrated that excellence doesn't fade with age. It only deepens. The young soldiers learned something that day that no training manual could teach. Respect isn't about rank or age. It's about recognizing skill, honoring experience, and understanding that the most dangerous assumption you can make is that you already know everything. Shaw kept coming back every Tuesday, kept teaching, kept watching young soldiers grow from cocky to confident, from dismissive to respectful. And every time someone new showed up and underestimated the old man on the bench, the veterans who'd been there would just smile and say, "You'll see." Because legends don't announce themselves. They just pull the trigger. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe the greatest teachers often come in the most unexpected forms. Real mastery doesn't need recognition. It just waits quietly for the moment to remind everyone what excellence really looks like. Until next time, remember, never underestimate the person you don't know. They might just be the legend you never expected to meet.